The distress signal echoed through the cold void of space, a desperate cry for help lost in the vast darkness. It was weak, barely noticeable among the endless transmissions that filled the galactic network, but it carried something different, something ancient, something unmistakable. It was human. The signal originated from a forgotten colony, one that was supposed to have been abandoned centuries ago. The Galactic Dominion, a ruthless empire that ruled through fear and power, had never considered humans a threat. They were seen as a minor species, scattered and insignificant, barely worth mentioning in the grand scheme of the cosmos. But this signal, this lone plea for help, was about to change everything. Deep within the Sol system, where Earth and its allied worlds lay in slumber, the signal reached the heart of humanity's most feared fleet, the Black Armada. For centuries, the human fleet had remained hidden, spoken of only in whispers, its existence more myth than fact. But those who had seen it firsthand knew the truth. It was real, and it was the last thing any enemy wanted to face. The signal was old, yet it carried urgency. The moment it was received, alarms blared across the command centers of the fleet. Admiral Kane, a veteran of countless battles, stood motionless as he listened to the distress call play on repeat. The voice was strained, filled with fear. "This is Outpost Epsilon. We are under attack. Unknown enemy. Casualties. We need help. Anyone, please respond." Then silence. The message cut off abruptly, leaving only static in its wake. The room remained quiet for a moment before Kane turned to his officers, his expression dark and unreadable. "How long has it been looping?" he asked. A young officer hesitated before answering. "At least a week, sir. It was buried under Dominion transmissions. If we hadn't been monitoring old human frequencies, we would have never found it." Kane exhaled sharply. A week. By now, the colony could already be gone. But if there was even a chance that humans were still out there, still fighting, he knew what had to be done. "Prepare the fleet," he commanded, his voice cold as steel. "We're going in." Across the fleet, massive warships stirred from their silent watch. Engines roared to life, weapons systems activated, and the vast armada that had once been the terror of the stars began to move. The Dominion had long forgotten why humanity was feared, but now, because of a single desperate signal, they were about to be reminded. The Black Armada surged forward, its colossal warships breaking free from their hidden positions. Engines ignited, pushing them into the cold abyss of space, their dark hulls reflecting the dim light of distant stars. The fleet moved like a silent predator, an unstoppable force that had been sleeping for far too long. The distress signal had woken them, and now there was no turning back. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the flagship Iron Requiem, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the source of the SOS. Outpost Epsilon was located near the edge of Dominion-controlled space, a place no one had paid attention to in centuries. The outpost had been deemed unimportant, abandoned, or so they had believed. Yet now it was under attack. The question was, by whom? And why? The Dominion should not have cared about an old human colony unless it had something valuable hidden beneath its surface. Kane clenched his jaw. It didn't matter who the enemy was. What mattered was that humans were in danger, and humanity did not abandon its own. As the fleet moved closer, scout ships were deployed ahead. The tension inside the command center thickened as the first images came in. The outpost was in ruins. Flames and debris drifted in the vacuum, shattered structures floating lifelessly. But there were still signs of movement, flashes of energy weapons flickering in the darkness. Survivors. They were still fighting. Kane's grip on the command console tightened. "Open a channel to all ships," he ordered. Within moments, his voice echoed through the fleet. "We are no longer in hiding. The enemy thinks we are weak, that we are forgotten relics of an old war. They are wrong. Today, we remind them who we are. Prepare for battle." Across the fleet, weapons came online, missile silos opened, and railguns hummed with power. The Dominion had ruled unchecked for too long, believing themselves invincible. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had attacked humanity. They had drawn out the one force that had been waiting in the shadows, sharpening its blades in silence. Now, the Black Armada was coming, and when it arrived, there would be no mercy. The first wave of Dominion ships came into view, smaller vessels patrolling the wreckage of the outpost, their attention focused on the last pockets of human resistance below. They had no idea death was approaching from above. The fleet engaged with ruthless precision. Railguns fired kinetic slugs at near-light speed, tearing through enemy hulls like paper. Swarms of automated drones shot out from the human warships, weaving between enemy formations, cutting through their defenses with unmatched speed. Explosions lit up the void, debris scattering in all directions. The Dominion ships barely had time to react before their forces were overwhelmed. The fleet had been waiting for this moment for years, training in secret, preparing for the day humanity would rise again. This was not a battle. It was a slaughter. On the surface of the outpost, the surviving colonists watched in shock as the sky burned. What had been a hopeless last stand against an unbeatable enemy was now turning into something else, something they had never dared to dream of. They had sent a distress call, never expecting an answer. But someone had answered. Not just anyone. The Black Armada. The stories, the legends, they were real. Humanity's deadliest fleet had returned, and it had only just begun. The battle was far from over. Though the first wave of Dominion ships had been annihilated, the real fight was only beginning. As the Black Armada pushed deeper into the outpost's orbit, enemy reinforcements emerged from the darkness of space. Massive warships, bristling with energy cannons, formed a defensive line. The Dominion had finally realized what they were dealing with. The humans were not some forgotten relic of the past. They were warriors, sharpened by years of exile and preparation. But the Dominion would not surrender easily. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, crushing civilizations beneath their heel. They would not allow humanity to rise again. Admiral Kane stood firm, watching as the enemy fleet organized itself. The Dominion's flagship, a towering behemoth called Tyrannus, moved into position, its energy shields glowing like a star. Kane had read about this ship. It had led the conquest of 100 worlds, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. But today, it would face something it had never encountered before: true human wrath. "Bring the fleet into attack formation," Kane ordered, his voice calm but cold. "All ships target the flagship. We break their spine first." Across the Black Armada, weapons powered up. The fleet's battleships spread out, their railguns locking onto enemy targets. Swarms of interceptor drones launched from hidden bays, darting through the void like metal wasps. The Dominion fleet opened fire first, sending waves of plasma and energy beams toward the human warships. Shields flared, absorbing the first impacts, but some shots found their mark. A smaller cruiser, the Valiant, took a direct hit to its engines, causing it to spin out of formation. Kane barely acknowledged it. He knew his people. They would fight to the last breath. He had no time for distractions. His eyes were fixed on Tyrannus. The Dominion believed their technology made them invincible. That was their greatest weakness. They relied on energy weapons, sophisticated but predictable. They had never fought an enemy like the Black Armada, an enemy that knew how to exploit every weakness. "Launch the decoys," Kane commanded. In an instant, a cluster of small, unarmed ships shot forward, moving erratically. The Dominion's automated targeting systems locked onto them, mistaking them for high-priority threats. Plasma cannons unleashed their fury, reducing the decoys to ash. But while the Dominion focused on the wrong targets, the real attack began. The Black Armada's battleships unleashed their railguns, firing hypervelocity projectiles that ignored energy shields completely. Kinetic force did not care about technology. It simply destroyed. The first rounds tore through the Dominion warships, ripping through hulls, causing catastrophic explosions from within. Tyrannus took several direct hits, its shields flickering under the brutal assault. Dominion officers scrambled to adjust their strategy, but it was too late. Humanity fought with tactics no one else understood. This was not an organized, predictable battle. This was war, the way only humans knew how to wage it, ruthless, efficient, and merciless. The Dominion fleet began to falter. Ships broke formation, trying to retreat, but the Black Armada showed no mercy. They pursued relentlessly, striking down every fleeing vessel. The last to fall was Tyrannus. Its mighty hull, once a symbol of Dominion power, now lay shattered, broken apart by railgun fire and missile barrages. Its wreckage drifted through the battlefield, a silent warning to any who dared challenge humanity. As the fires of battle dimmed, a chilling silence filled the void. The Black Armada had won, but Cain knew this was just the beginning. The Dominion would not accept defeat. They would return, stronger and more prepared. That was fine. Humanity had waited long enough for this war. Now they would finish what was started centuries ago. Cain turned away from the battlefield and gave his next order. Set course for Dominion space. We're taking the fight to them. The fleet obeyed without question. The galaxy had ignored humanity for too long. That mistake would not be repeated. The Black Armada moved like a shadow of death through the void, cutting deeper into Dominion territory. Word of their arrival had already spread, sending waves of panic across the alien empire. Once, the Dominion had seen humanity as nothing more than a forgotten race, an ancient footnote in the galaxy's long history. Now they understood their mistake, but it was far too late. Humanity was no longer just returning. They were coming to claim vengeance. The fleet had no intention of stopping. Every world they passed was given a choice: surrender or burn. Some Dominion colonies, fearing the wrath of these vengeful warriors, laid down their weapons without a fight. Others, too blinded by their arrogance, resisted. They paid the price. The Black Armada did not fight like other species. They did not negotiate, did not hesitate. They fought with the cold precision of executioners. Their weapons did not just destroy ships. They shattered entire war fleets before the enemy could even react. Admiral Cain stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, watching as another Dominion stronghold fell. The orbital defenses had crumbled in mere minutes. The enemy fleet had been vaporized before they could even form a proper counterattack. The ground forces had been given a single warning: stand down or face annihilation. Many surrendered without a fight, dropping their weapons and kneeling before their new masters. Cain did not waste time on speeches. Humanity had spent too long in the shadows, waiting for their moment. Now that it had arrived, there was no need for words. There was only action. The Dominion, however, refused to accept the truth. From the heart of their empire, the supreme warlord of the Dominion, Kravith, had issued a call for total war. He declared humanity an existential threat, rallying every remaining fleet to his banner. He still believed that numbers would save them, that superior firepower would turn the tide. Cain almost pitied him. The Dominion still did not understand what they were fighting. The final battle loomed on the horizon. The Black Armada set its course for the Dominion's capital world, Dravis Prime. It was a fortress planet, ringed with massive defense stations and guarded by the largest fleet that the galaxy had ever seen. Tens of thousands of Dominion warships stood ready, forming an impenetrable wall around their homeworld. Any other species would have seen this and hesitated. Any other fleet would have reconsidered. But humanity was different. Cain saw the Dominion's last stand and gave only one order: advance. The fleet surged forward, cutting through space with ruthless efficiency. The Dominion opened fire first, unleashing a storm of plasma and energy beams. Space itself seemed to burn under the intensity of the barrage. But the Black Armada did not falter. They flew through the storm, weaving through the chaos with terrifying precision. Dominion ships fell like crumbling towers, their mighty hulls torn apart by relentless railgun fire. But the true terror came when the boarding pods launched. Thousands of human soldiers, clad in advanced combat armor, stormed the Dominion ships and stations. They moved like ghosts, silent and unstoppable. Dominion warriors fought desperately, but it was hopeless. Humanity had perfected the art of war. Every corridor became a killing ground. Every Dominion officer that refused to surrender met a swift, brutal end. Their empire, once the greatest force in the galaxy, was being dismantled piece by piece. The final moments of the battle were the most brutal. Kane watched as Dravis Prime's defenses crumbled, its planetary shields flickering and failing. The Black Armada had one last message to send, a message that no species would ever forget. "Fire the dreadnoughts," Kane ordered. The sky above Dravis Prime turned to fire as the most powerful human warships unleashed their payloads. Massive kinetic bombardments rained down on the surface, cracking the very crust of the planet. Entire cities vanished in seconds. The Dominion's leaders, once so confident in their power, were wiped out in an instant. The homeworld of the Dominion, the very heart of their empire, was no more. Kane turned away from the destruction. There was no satisfaction in it, only necessity. The war was over. Humanity had returned. And now, the galaxy would remember their name forever. The message was clear: challenge humanity, and you would not just lose, you would cease to exist. The ruins of Dravis Prime still smoldered, the once mighty capital of the Dominion reduced to nothing but ash and shattered rock. The world that had once commanded the entire galactic quadrant was now just another graveyard, a warning to those who thought themselves above humanity. But the war was not yet over. Though the Dominion's leadership had been obliterated, their remnants still clung to survival. Fleets scattered across the stars, warlords rising from the wreckage, each one desperate to carve out a piece of the dying empire. Some sought vengeance, refusing to accept their defeat. Others simply wished to escape, hoping to vanish before humanity could hunt them down. But there would be no escape. Humanity did not leave wars unfinished. The Black Armada split into multiple hunting groups, each one tasked with eliminating every last trace of Dominion resistance. They did not just strike at fleets. They tore apart every hidden base, every supply line, every last stronghold. The Dominion had once thought themselves predators. Now, they were the prey. Admiral Kane stood aboard the Eclipse, watching another Dominion warband meet its inevitable fate. The remnants of a once proud fleet tried to flee, their engines burning at maximum power, but there was nowhere to run. The Black Armada's warships moved like shadows, their precise formations cutting off every possible escape route. Within moments, the battle was over. The enemy's ships were nothing more than debris floating in the void. Kane gave the same command he had given countless times before: leave no survivors. The wreckage was scanned for any remaining life signs, and when none were found, the fleet moved on. Kane knew that the final battle had already been won, but now came the most important phase of war: erasure. The Dominion would not just be defeated. They would be wiped from existence. On the far edges of Dominion space, Supreme Warlord Kravith still clung to life. Somehow, he had escaped the destruction of Dravis Prime, fleeing to a hidden military base deep within an uncharted system. There he had gathered the last remnants of his loyal forces. He had sworn to rebuild, to rise again, to one day take vengeance on humanity. But he did not understand the nature of his enemy. He still fought like an alien, believing that wars could be won with time and patience. Humanity did not allow their enemies time to recover. Kane had already anticipated Kravith's last stand. The Supreme Warlord's hidden base was not so hidden after all. Humanity's advanced reconnaissance systems had already pinpointed its location. The Black Armada was on its way. Kravith did not realize his mistake until it was too late. The Black Armada arrived in force, emerging from the void like a storm of death. The last of the Dominion fleet, battered and desperate, attempted to fight back, but their resistance was meaningless. The humans had perfected the art of planetary assault. The Dominion's final fortress was cracked open within minutes, its defenses obliterated by railgun strikes and kinetic bombardments. Kraveth, the last leader of a dying empire, stood in his war room, watching in horror as his final hope crumbled before his very eyes. The doors of his bunker were torn open, and through the smoke and fire, human soldiers emerged. They moved like specters, clad in armor black as the void, their faces obscured behind cold, unfeeling visors. Kraveth's personal guards fought with the desperation of doomed men, but it was hopeless. The humans did not hesitate. They did not falter. Within moments, the warlord stood alone, surrounded by the very species he had once thought inferior. Cain stepped forward, his presence radiating an unshakable certainty. Kraveth knew, in that moment, that his species had never stood a chance. This was not just a war. This was an execution. "Your empire is no more," Cain said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Your people are gone. Your worlds belong to us now." Kraveth snarled, hatred and defiance still burning in his eyes. But there was no point. He had nothing left. No army, no fleet, no future. Cain raised his weapon, and in a single final moment, the last remnant of the Dominion ceased to exist. The Black Armada did not celebrate. There was no need. This was not a victory. It was simply the way of things. Humanity had returned to the stars, and they would never be ignored again. The war was over, and the message had been sent. Challenge humanity, and you will not just lose. You will be erased. The galaxy was silent in the aftermath of the Dominion's destruction. No empire, no warlord, no ambitious species dared to challenge humanity now. The ruins of Dravis Prime remained as a grim monument to what happened when one underestimated the most lethal species in existence. The Black Armada continued its relentless purge, ensuring that not a single trace of Dominion resistance remained. Their fleets moved like predators, striking down warbands that attempted to regroup, wiping out hidden fortresses buried deep within asteroid belts, eliminating every last remnant of the enemy. But it was not enough for humanity to simply destroy the Dominion's military might. They understood that true victory came from something far more permanent: control. Cain and the other commanders of the Black Armada had already anticipated what would happen in the power vacuum left behind. Other alien species, opportunistic scavengers, and ambitious warlords would seek to claim what was left of Dominion space. But humanity had no intention of allowing another threat to rise. This war had proven a simple fact: the galaxy could not be trusted to govern itself. And so the decision was made. The Dominion's territory would not be abandoned. It would be claimed. Across hundreds of war-ravaged systems, humanity's fleets did not retreat. Instead, they remained, establishing their dominion over the stars. The battered worlds of the fallen empire, still smoldering from orbital bombardments, saw the arrival of human ground forces, not as conquerors, but as the new law. Cities that had once housed the Dominion's ruling class were rebuilt, not as the centers of a new alien government, but as strongholds of humanity's control. Massive orbital stations were constructed, each one a fortress that kept the former Dominion worlds in check. The message was clear: humanity had not just won the war, they were here to stay. Those who wished to resist were crushed swiftly and without mercy. The Black Armada did not allow rebellion. The Dominion's former subject species, those who had once been ruled with an iron fist, now faced a choice: either submit to humanity's rule or face the same fate as their former masters. Most of them understood that resistance was suicide. And so, humanity's dominion expanded. Former Dominion colonies were repurposed, their resources funneled into the growing human empire. Alien fleets that once served the Dominion were either dismantled or integrated into humanity's growing war machine. A new order was being forged in the aftermath of war, one built upon humanity's unshakable will. The galactic community, those species that had once watched the war from a safe distance, now found themselves facing an uncomfortable reality. Humanity had not just defeated their enemy. They had proven something far more dangerous. They were willing to reshape the galaxy itself. This was no longer about a single war. This was about control. The other great powers of the galaxy, those who had once viewed themselves as untouchable, now whispered among themselves in fear. If humanity could crush the Dominion so utterly, what would stop them from doing the same to anyone else? Treaties were discussed. Alliances were reconsidered. Some species even contemplated preemptive strikes, believing that if they did not act now, humanity would one day turn its gaze upon them. But none had the courage to act. The Black Armada, now the most feared military force in the known galaxy, patrolled former Dominion space with cold efficiency. Planets that had once been hubs of alien power were now under strict human control. Law and order were enforced not by fragile agreements, but by the undeniable presence of humanity's fleets. And yet, humanity did not rule as tyrants. They understood something that the Dominion had never grasped. True power was not just about fear. It was about order. Under their rule, trade routes reopened. Stability returned. Former Dominion subjects, once oppressed and brutalized, now found themselves under a new regime, one that demanded obedience, but also provided security. Some saw this as salvation. Others saw it as a new kind of dominion, one just as unbreakable as the last. And as humanity solidified its hold over its new empire, the rest of the galaxy was left to wonder, was this the end, or just the beginning? Humanity had won. The Dominion was gone, its fleets shattered, its rulers dead, its worlds under new control. The galaxy watched in silence as the Black Armada established a new order, one built not on fragile peace treaties, but on absolute dominance. The former Dominion worlds, once symbols of alien power, now bore the mark of humanity. Massive orbital stations loomed over them, enforcing strict control, ensuring that no rebellion could rise. Those who had once feared the Dominion now feared something even greater, the humans who had replaced them. But humanity did not rule with senseless cruelty. Unlike the Dominion, which had crushed its subjects under oppression and violence, humanity brought something else: stability. Trade routes reopened under their watch. Law returned to lawless regions. The chaos left in the wake of war was replaced with structure. And for many, it was preferable to the nightmare that had come before. Yet the galaxy still trembled. The other great powers, those who had once viewed themselves as equals, now lived in fear of humanity's next move. The Black Armada had proven that no empire was safe. The way they had wiped out the Dominion, swift, relentless, and with no hesitation, sent a message to every species watching. Some debated forming alliances to contain this growing power. Others wondered if negotiation was even possible, but none dared make the first move. They knew one thing: if humanity saw them as a threat, there would be no warnings, no second chances, only annihilation. The Black Armada continued its patrols, securing the new human dominion, ensuring that no resistance could rise. But among the human leadership, discussions had already begun. This war had proven something undeniable. Humanity was no longer just another species in the galactic community. They were now the dominant force, and dominance required expansion. The Dominion had fallen, but the galaxy was still vast, filled with potential threats. If humanity did not act first, if they did not ensure their own security, someone else would rise to challenge them. And so, decisions were made. The Black Armada would not stop here. The borders of humanity's control would continue to expand. This was not the end of war. This was only the beginning of humanity's reign. For the rest of the galaxy, a terrifying realization settled in. The Dominion had challenged humanity and paid the price. Now, there were only two choices: submit or be next.